Hey, what's up, guys? It's Diz. I'm going to go over the Mage build that I just did and kind of explain how it works, its weaknesses, how you achieve this, and hopefully this will help out new players and returning players with the new patch that just came out. I'm pretty excited for everything, and let's go over it. So, we're going to start with Big Fury. You saw that in the intro. This weapon is really, really strong. You just get a bunch of raw damage. This kit just scales with raw damage, and that's pretty much what you're gonna stack the entire time when you gear. The runes, we go with the rune of Nimble Warrior. So what this does is it pretty much buffs the crap out of the primary skill, and that's what you're gonna be spamming. Arcane missiles. We'll get to that later, but you're going to be spamming that. This just increases the damage, the crit chance, Ancestral Strike, all that good stuff. And then the Rune of Hagen, this will buff the Rune of Nimble Warrior by a lot, so it just increases the effect. And then we got, after you deal Ancestral Strike damage, this is your effect rune. So it'll pretty much, this is how you activate this rune, which will activate this rune. So it all synergizes really well. None of my gear is 80, so I'm still working on it. I'm still working on this kit. I'm at 300k skill damage, which is actually quite a lot. It's pretty crazy actually, and I still have a long ways to go. So I'm pretty excited. I can probably get to 400k pretty easy. So as far as gear and stats goes, like I said, you want to stack like raw damage. You want to stack ancestral crit chance, crit damage, or ancestral strike damage. You want to get more crit chance, raw damage. You're going to see a lot of raw damage in the build. I got some movement speed as well, and I try to fit life in there as much as possible. You're very squishy with this build. You're extremely squishy. Um, the legendaries I use too is on the helm. If I die, it resurrects me, puts me at 67% max life, gives me a shield that makes me immune to damage for 2 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown. This helmet has came in very clutch. Um, there's not a good legendary for this build, unfortunately, for the neck, but that's okay. We're not. The epics are fine. So the chest piece, I do more damage with the time lock. There is time lock in this build, and I'll kind of explain that as well and what time lock does. I'm using the cloak for gold. You don't have to use this cloak. I just used it because there's not a better one for me to use for this build, so I just went for gold. And then for this belt, if it's for stagger, so whenever I get hit, it'll stagger damage. So hopefully it'll prevent me from getting one shot. I still get one shot, but it's less likely chance I'll get one shot. And then whenever I do ancestral strike damage, it'll remove the stagger damage. So, which is great. It'll prevent me from dying. I'm using the ancestral champions ring. This gives me +1 rank on all my ancestral skills. And ancestral skills are right here. So it just gives me one more rank on all these skills, which I'll go over these after I explain the gear. And then I went with the gold boots. There's not a good legendary as far as like uh, buffing this build up, so I just went with gold boots. You can go with the armor boots. I don't think I have them. Oh, right here. You get a multiplier for armor, but you're not stacking armor with this build. You're, like I said, you're very squishy. Um, I went with the life on hit ring. This is just extra. I don't think you necessarily need it, but life on hit and life on kill is just good, and it helps you stay alive. So I can't really complain. And I went with life leech gloves. Also another form of keeping me alive. Um, because since I'm glass cannon, I want to just keep my health full at all times. I don't want to take the chance of getting like low health and stay at low health. I went with the Echoes of Villainous. So whenever I crit, It does. It's like a debuff that triggers after 2 seconds, and it deals 22% of the damage I dealt earlier, which is great. And then this is what makes this build so strong: is these shoulders, um, the projectile shoulders. So if I cast one projectile, I will instead cast 6 projectiles. So whenever I'm using arcane missiles, you can see all the bouncing missiles that are going everywhere. So I just get a big number of them. I'm just spamming this, and it's just all bouncing everywhere and ricocheting. And yeah, that's pretty much the gear. I'm not gonna go in every like single detail when it comes to the stats. If y'all would like a guide of me going over the stats and what to choose and kind of the reasonings behind why I chose this stat, then I'll do that to help y'all out. And then let's go over the skills. So we got arcane missiles. This is our main source of damage. This is pretty much all you're going to be spamming. Your first row, you're going to get uh, incomplete missile. So you're going to get straight up 35% attack speed. Like, you can't really complain about that. That's just awesome. And then you got Remnant's Wingman. So whenever you're using arcane missiles, you have an 80% chance to cast a Remnant, which is like a secondary, like it's like a baby arcane missile. So these do technically 50% decreased damage, but I have a skill that increases my Remnant damage. So instead reduces it by 20%. This skill is amazing. It's called Evolve and Overcome. Arcane Missile has a Pierce chance, Fort chance, and Rebound equal to the highest among these stats. So what that means is whatever stat I stack. So like for example, if I stack Pierce chance, that's what the stat I do stack, I have 100% in everything else as well. So if I have 100% Pierce, I have 100% in Fort chance and Rebound. So it's really great to getting all the skills that I need. Then I got Remnant Lock. So when my remnants attack, they have a 25% chance to apply Time Lock, which is where that chess piece came into play. So that's just great. Now I don't use this skill because I like to have more projectiles, but you can use this skill. This skill is awesome. If you're having trouble burning bosses, what this does is you can no longer have additional projectiles. Arcane Missile deals 55% increased damage for every additional projectile you can throw. So even if you were to use these shoulders that I showed y'all, you would not get the projectiles, but you would get the increased damage. So you'll really hit super hard with this skill. But that's only if you're like farming bosses, like high end content, and you really need the extra damage. I personally like the extra projectiles, but both are great. It just kind of depends on the play style that you want. If you want them extra damage with the less projectiles, that's fine. If you want the more projectiles, that's fine too. There's no right or wrong answer. My second skill, Arcane Breach. I don't use this skill very much unless it's really, really high end content. And it's just there. That's pretty much about it. You're just spamming arcane missiles. That's all you're doing. But if you do need it, you're going to go with Violent Contact. So with the more Ancestral strike damage you have, whenever you lay this down, it's going to do an initial hit of burst damage. And it's going to be based on your Ancestral strike damage. So the very first time you land it, it's going to do a big damage number, and then it's going to do tick damage as long as they're in the radius of or in the radius of Arcane Breach. On the second row, I got multi breaches, so it reduces a cooldown. Arcane Breach has a pretty hefty cooldown, so having this up more is great. The only bad thing is it increases the mana cost, so if you don't have a lot of mana gains, you're going to have a tough time with this skill, which in my spec, I have a great amount of mana recovery, so I don't have to worry about it. We're going to go in the third row, Arcane Flux. So whenever Arcane Breach deals damage, I get a stacking buff of attack speed. Well, since I'm spamming Arcane Missiles, I want that attack speed because that means I can spam Arcane Missiles faster, which is just great because it just combos well with it. And then we're going to go Ever-Growing Portal. So if you cast Arcane Missiles into Breach, it's going to get bigger. It just grows in size, which is awesome. It's good for just doing stuff like this. So yeah, I'm going to cast it, and then I'm just going to spam this, and you can see the radius just getting massive. And then you can go either one, but I like the little bit extra damage with Arcane Breach. So each Arcane Breach and Arcane Explosion deal 20% increased damage for each Arcanic emblem you have. Arcanic emblem is the Mage passive. So you're going to have these little emblems at the bottom left-hand corner. I will show you. I'll just go into a random rift. You're going to have these little emblems. For every Arcanic emblem, I get 15%, well, 5% attack speed, but since I have 3, I get a total of 15%, which is just great with Arcane Missiles. So you want to have Arcane, emblems all the time, because then you get that extra attack speed, which is just awesome. And then we're going to go on to the spec. So I'll go with Philomatic Caster, I think that's how you say. If I said that wrong, I do apologize. We're going to go with Experienced Battle Mage on the first row. You get just straight up 40% crit damage. That's half your levels, so at low levels, you won't get very much from this. It's kind of like a useless talent. So you can go with Slorm if you're like leveling up. Slorm is your blue stuff, which allows you to put more resources into your skills. It's actually pretty great. Or you can go with this. Whenever you cast a skill, you refund at 50% of the mana cost after a short delay. So if you're having mana issues, you can go with Cheap Trick. Clone Wars. So whenever you cast a primary or secondary skill, Temporal Clone casts a remnant of Arcane Missile in the direction. So what that means, if I use my support skill, which is this right here, if I use that and then use Arcane Missiles, it's going to shoot Arcane Missile as well. Which is just, it doesn't really do too much, but it's just cool that a little bit extra damage. Now, Life Shaper is absolutely busted. I think this is a great skill. Whenever you gain life or life leech, life on hit, or life on kill, you gain the same amount of mana. So that means you don't need any kind of like mana on hit. You don't need any mana leech. You don't need any mana on kill to get mana back because you automatically get it with this, which is awesome. Blast from the Past. Your remnant skills deal 60% increased damage. This is the skill I was talking about earlier. So if I unequip it, my remnant does 50% decreased damage. But if I equip it, it does 20%. So it just helps my remnants out quite a lot. Overdrives. Visage, I believe is all you said. Whenever a remnant skill does damage to an enemy, it has a 25% chance to trigger remnant of overdrive. So this is just that little bit of extra damage. It's not crazy. So, but since we're spamming remnants, you might as well just pick it up. Mocking Clone. So this pretty much just makes your clone a little bit more tankier. We're really not worried about it. This is just a fluff skill. It's just a skill that we just pick up. You don't really need it. You don't even need anything in this row, to be honest. We're not stacking elemental damage, so we don't need that. And we don't really care about the clone stuff anyways. Ancestral Command, this skill is amazing. This is a must. 10% Ancestral Strike chance, which if you're new to the game and you don't know what Ancestral Strike chance is, it's like a double crit. It's a crit within a crit. So whenever you crit, you have depending on your Ancestral Strike chance, you have a chance to get another crit on top of that, which is awesome. It has its own little damage modifier. And then we went with Heavier Cannon. So this is a stat stick, so it gives you more life, and it gives you more attack speed. Great skill right here. And that's pretty much the build. Now, we'll go over the Ancestral tree. you're stacking nothing but raw damage. Raw damage, raw damage, raw damage. And attack speed. So we come over here and we pick up Seasoned Hunter. We get some attack speed. We get armor penetration. Since we're doing raw damage, armor penetration is what you want. Elemental damage is not, but it's just there, so whatever, right? We went with Pain Weaver, 10% more damage, 10% raw, or 11% raw damage, and 11% damage to elites. This really doesn't matter too much. I'll explain why later. We went with Air Conditioner. This is just whenever enemies are near you, it slows their attack speed. It's okay. We don't really need this skill, but we're going down this path, so we might as well pick it up. The reason why we went down the path was for this, the raw boost. So you get flat raw damage, and then you get a percent modifier, which is amazing, because this is what you want to stack. Now we go with the Essential Accuracy. You get 22% projectile speed, 16.5% pierce, knockback, and armor pen. We don't need the pierce. Well, the pierce is great because we're stacking pierce, so that just helps with our gear. And then the projectile speed is awesome. Projectile speed is how fast your missiles shoot out, which is actually really important. And then knockback is kind of like a useless stat, but it's just there. It helps. And then we got armor pin. Armor pin is great. This does nothing for us. We're not stacking elemental damage. We're just trying to get to this node right here, which is lethal force. It's more crit chance, more crit damage, ancestral strike chance, and then ancestral strike damage. It's just a huge damage modifier right there. And then with your all put anywhere node, I went with the node way down here, which is raw boost again. This one gives 38% raw damage and 179 flat raw damage. Now, if you do not have this ring that I showed you earlier, where you get +1 rank, it won't be 38%, it'll be 35%. So a lot of these modifiers might be different in numbers because of that ring that I have. Also, we're going to go over the ultimatum. I went with the 45% increased damage to elites. I normally go with area damage reduction. If you're dying a lot to like stuff on the ground, then go with this. But this is a very glass cannon-y build, so I just went with more damage. I mean, it's either kill stuff or die, and at least for me. But if you want a little bit more survivability, you can go with the area damage reduction. Now let's go over the talents. Very glass cannon-y, so as you can see, I went just tons and tons of raw damage. Scales really well. All these nodes give me a bunch of damage. That's pretty much about it. Like, you just get loads of damage. The reason why we put 10 points in Fury is because there is crit chance nodes right here. So you got 4% and you got 6%, which is a total of 10% extra crit chance. And then we went into Zeal for the 5% Ancestral Strike chance. Because we want to get a lot of Ancestral Strike crits. And then we went into Dexterity. So this just gives us more attack speed, more max Reaper damage. And yeah, just pretty much about it. Just more damage and more attack speed. The reason why we went as far as we did is because there's projectile speed in this. And we wanted that so our missiles go crazy. And that's pretty much about it. You know, like I said, I'm sitting at a pretty nice 300k DPS or skill damage. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. This is the build, guys. If you have any questions, concerns, please leave a comment. This is my first guide video, so I don't expect it to be outstanding. If y'all have tips for me to improve, please let me know. Constructive criticism is always appreciated. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully it wasn't too long. And let me know what y'all want to know next. As far as guides goes, I'm working on a Huntress for gold farming. If you're confused about how the rune system is, I'll do a rune system video guide, kind of explain how the rune systems work. Um, if you're confused about the ancestral tree, I can do a guide with the ancestral tree as well. Whatever y'all prefer, whatever y'all think will help y'all in the long run, I'm willing to do. Any suggestions would be great. I still plan on throwing out guides, but if you want a quicker guide, if you want the gold farming guide up sooner than a different guide, please let me know. And that's pretty much about it, guys. Again, thank y'all so much. Please like the video if you liked it. Again, please give me your feedback, and y'all take it easy.